I stared in disbelief at the woman standing on my doorstep, suitcase in hand. "Eloise, what are you doing here?" My mother-in-law brushed past me without an invitation. "Well, aren't you going to let me in, dear? I've come to help with the baby." "Help?" I repeated dumbly. My protests were drowned out by the sound of my husband's voice. "Mom, what a wonderful surprise." Dean hurried over and enveloped Eloise in a hug. I watched the scene unfold with rising panic. This couldn't be happening. Eloise was now disentangling herself from Dean's embrace, tutting loudly. "Honestly, you two? This place is a mess. Have either of you lifted a finger to prepare for the baby?" Before I could respond, Dean jumped in. "You're right, Mom. We've been swamped with work. It'll be a huge help having you here." My mouth dropped open. "A help? Dean, we never discussed this." He shot me an apologetic glance. "Babe, don't be like that. My mom just wants what's best for us." Eloise nodded vigorously. "Of course, dear. A new mother needs guidance, after all." Her eyes bored into mine with thinly veiled disdain. I felt something inside me shrivel. This was exactly how it started with Jillian, Dean's sister. Eloise had swept in after Jillian's first child, running roughshod over every boundary until a bitter rift formed. Now she had her sights set on sinking her claws into my family, too. "I don't need any guidance," I bit out. "We're doing just fine on our own." Dean's brow furrowed in that familiar stubborn line. "Don't be rude, Corinne. My mom is trying to help." "Yes, I am." Eloise looped her arm through Dean's in a practiced motion. "But if my support isn't wanted, I understand." Her gaze slid to me, eyes glistening with artificial hurt. I clenched my jaw, fury warring with desperation. I knew how this game ended. If I held my ground, I'd be the vilified one, the ungrateful daughter-in-law who shamed her devoted husband by rejecting his loving mother's overtures. When Dean's pleading expression joined the fray, I felt the last of my resistance crumble. "Fine," I gritted out. "She can stay." Eloise's smile was a rictus of false warmth. "Thank you, dear. I'll try not to be a burden." I caught the gleam of triumph in her eyes and felt the first cold tendrils of dread uncurling in my heart. By allowing Eloise across the threshold, I'd granted her a foothold, and I had the terrible feeling she wouldn't relinquish it without one hell of a fight. True to her word, Eloise was indeed a burden from the moment she arrived. Within days, she had critiqued everything from my housekeeping to my wardrobe. "Really, Corinne, you're going to wear that? It does nothing for your figure." She clicked her tongue in disapproval as I pulled on a loose maternity top. Dean, ever the peacekeeper, tried to intervene. "Mom, lay off." "Corinne looks great." But Eloise merely waved him off. "Of course you'd say that, dear, but a mother needs to speak some hard truths sometimes." Her eyes bored into me again with that familiar disdain. I bit back the urge to snap at her, knowing it would only make me the vilified one in Dean's eyes. I felt the old anger and hurt churning in my gut, the same volatile stew I'd fought so hard not to inflict on my own mother. The final insult came a few days later when I caught Eloise clearing out space in the nursery closet. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my tenuous hold on civility fraying. Eloise didn't even turn around. "Just making room for a few necessities, dear. You can't raise a baby in this pigsty." White, hot fury propelled me forward until I was right behind her. "Those are my things! You can't just throw them out!" "Oh." Eloise arched one perfectly groomed brow. "And where, pray tell? Were you planning to put the changing table? The crib? This tiny space can barely fit the basics." "We were going to move the changing table into the bedroom," I growled through gritted teeth. Eloise tutted again, that same infuriating noise. "Don't be ridiculous. You'll both need your rest. Keeping the baby in your room will only lead to squabbling and sleep deprivation." "It's our baby." The words burst from me like shrapnel. "We'll raise it how we see fit." In an instant, Eloise's expression shifted from feigned concern to cold disdain. "Is that so? From where I'm standing, you're the one acting like a child, dear." My hands clenched into fists, barely resisting the urge to lash out physically. Before I could retort, the sound of Dean's footsteps reached my ears. I watched helplessly as Eloise smoothed her face into a mask of serene innocence. When Dean entered, I fought to keep my composure. "Your mother is throwing out our things." "What?" Dean's gaze swiveled between us, plainly bewildered. "Mom, what's going on?" "Nothing, sweetie." Eloise was the picture of aggrieved gentility. "I was merely trying to make some space. But if Corinne would rather the baby sleep in squalor... That's not what I said. I could hear the shrillness in my own voice. Dean held up his hands in a placating gesture. Hey, let's all just take it easy, okay? The sickly sweet smile was back as Eloise laid a hand on his arm. Of course, honey, you know I only want what's best for you both. In that moment, I saw it all too clearly. Her maddening gaslighting, her manipulation of Dean's emotions to undermine me. Her flagrant disrespect for any boundaries I tried to set. This was why Jillian's family had cut ties. And if I didn't do something soon, Eloise would drive the same explosive wedge into my own marriage. A few days later, I escaped to my friend Maya's house, needing a break from the suffocating tension. I just don't know what to do, I vented as soon as she opened the door. Eloise is driving me crazy. She questions everything I do, oversteps every boundary. Maya ushered me inside, her expression one of sympathy. That's awful, Corinne. Why don't you just kick her out? I've tried. I sank onto her sofa with a groan. But Dean refuses to see how toxic she is. He's completely under her spell. Shaking her head, Maya sat beside me. Men can be so oblivious when it comes to their mothers. Have you tried talking to him again? Yeah, and it's always the same thing. She means well, Corinne. Don't be so hard on her. I threw up my hands in frustration. Meanwhile, Eloise acts like a sweet little angel whenever he's around. That manipulative witch, Maya muttered. I nodded miserably. Exactly. And the worst part is, she's already turning this pregnancy into a total nightmare. Can you believe she invited people over for some stupid baby prep party without even asking me? Maya's eyes widened. She didn't. Oh, she did. My jaw clenched at the memory. Just barged into the kitchen, announcing it like it was a done deal. I've invited the Hendersons and the Wilsons to come over this Saturday to help get things ready. Maya shook her head slowly. That's a major violation of privacy, not to mention safety concerns with strangers in your home. Tell me about it. I laughed bitterly. When I tried protesting, Eloise turned it around like I was the rude one, putting up roadblocks instead of embracing the village that was coming together for us. That's insane. Maya's eyes flashed with anger. She can't just appropriate your pregnancy like that. According to her, she absolutely can. When Dean backed her up on it, I trailed off, feeling defeated all over again. Maya's hand found mine, giving it a comforting squeeze. Hey, you can't let her get away with steamrolling you like this. That's exactly what she wants. Her words struck a chord. Eloise did want to dominate me, to usurp control over every aspect of my life under the guise of helping. Anger flared in my chest, burning away the hopelessness. You're right, I said, jaw set with new determination. I can't just roll over for her insanity. Enough is enough. Maya grinned fiercely. So what's the plan? 100 possibilities flickered through my mind, each more outrageous than the last. But one in particular made me pause. A half-formed scheme taking root. Actually, I said slowly, I might have an idea. A few days after my visit with Maya, the final straw came in the form of a shattered vase. I returned home from running errands to find Eloise rummaging through my closet again. Clothes and shoes were strewn everywhere. What the hell is going on here? I demanded, hands clenching into fists. Eloise didn't even turn around. Such language, Corinne. Hardly befitting for a mother. Befitting? I echoed, anger making my voice tremble. How about basic privacy and respect? That got her attention. Eloise swiveled to face me, mouth pinched in displeasure. Don't be so dramatic, dear. I was merely trying to clear out some space. By destroying my closet? Those are my things. Clutter and chaos, more like, she sniffed disdainfully. You'll thank me once the nursery is ready. Something inside me snapped at her sheer entitlement. Get out, I bit out through gritted teeth. Get out of my house right now. Eloise's eyes went wide with unconvincing hurt. Corinne, surely you don't mean... I mean it, I overrode her sharply. You've overstayed any welcome you might have had. Pack your things and leave. For a moment, she seemed taken aback by my vehemence. But her recovery was swift, lips curling into a disdainful smile. You poor, deluded girl. You honestly believe you have any authority here? Her tone was laced with patronizing pity. This is my son's home, and whether you like it or not, I'll always have a place in it. White-hot fury lanced through me. Before I could retort, the sound of shattering glass rent the air as my foot knocked over a vase. Eloise's hand flew to her mouth in theatrical dismay. "You clumsy child! Those were antique Venetian, you foolish girl!" I opened my mouth, any remaining respect I'd harbored for this woman withering on my tongue. But it was Dean's voice that cut through the tension. "What's going on?" I heard a crash. He took in the scene with bewildered eyes, the clothes strewn everywhere, my flushed cheeks, Eloise's look of carefully crafted dismay. Before I could say a word, she pounced. "Oh, sweetie, it was simply dreadful. I was only trying to help organize a bit, and Corinne just flew into a rage." "What?" I choked out. "That's not shattered that priceless vase your grandmother left me in a fit of uncontrolled temper." Eloise went on, tears welling artfully in her eyes. "I did not." I turned desperately to Dean. "She was going through my things again without permission." But the damage was done. Dean's expression was a kaleidoscope of conflicting emotions, disappointment, anger, hurt, all directed at me. "That's enough," he said lowly. "We'll discuss this later. Mom, why don't you go lie down?" With a tremulous sob, Eloise nodded and exited the room. I was left alone with Dean, suddenly bone-weary under the weight of his stony glare. "Well?" he prompted after a stilted silence. "What do you have to say for yourself?" I opened my mouth, 1,000 recriminations on my tongue. But in that moment I knew no defense would be enough to sway him. Dean was too entrenched in his blind support of his mother. My shoulders sagged in defeat. What was the point of fighting a war I couldn't win? That night, as I lay awake in bed, the first flickers of another strategy began taking shape. If shouting matches and explosive confrontations failed, perhaps a more subtle approach was needed. Eloise wanted to undermine me? Well, two could play at that game. Only this time I'd strike with stealth and cunning rather than blunt force. After all, she'd taught me well in the art of deception and revenge. The next morning, I awoke with a newfound sense of purpose. As Eloise swept into the kitchen, serene as ever, I forced a placating smile. "Good morning. I'm so sorry about my outburst yesterday. The pregnancy hormones, you know." I let out a self-deprecating chuckle. Eloise's eyes narrowed fractionally before she smoothed her features. "Well, I certainly understand how unsettling this transition can be, dear." "Exactly." I nodded in agreement. "Which is why I'm so grateful to have your guidance. You're absolutely right. I need to start nesting and embrace the village rallying around us." Her smugness was palpable, suspicion forgotten. "I'm pleased you've finally come to your senses." Over the next few days, I played the part of the reformed, compliant daughter-in-law to perfection. When Eloise criticized my cleaning methods, I listened meekly. As she reorganized the house to her liking, I uttered not a word of protest. All the while, I began piecing together my real plan. The first step was contacting Jillian, Dean's estranged sister. Though our relationship was strained due to Eloise's meddling, she proved a wellspring of information about our mother-in-law's past manipulations. "I've got boxes of evidence," Jillian confided when we met for coffee. "Emails, texts, you name it, all documenting the cruel, underhanded ways Mom drove a wedge between me and my husband until he couldn't take it anymore." I listened with equal parts horror and vindication as she recounted dozens of instances just like the ones I'd endured, only far worse. Next, I began stockpiling my own proof. Each time Eloise bounded a line, I hit record on my phone to capture the rants and diatribes when Dean wasn't present, her feigned politeness giving way to biting derision and judgment. "Who does she think she is, contradicting me like that?" she fumed after one argument about baby supplies. "She's worse than a child. At least children still mind their elders." Through it all, I maintained my facade of humbleness and compliance. Let Eloise have her shallow victory for now. She could swan around playing the martyr, the voice of reason, right up until her own actions undid her. The final piece fell into place when Maya helped me get in touch with 2 other daughters-in-law who'd been driven apart from their families by Eloise's poisonous influence. "Sarah and I used to be so close," Patty lamented, "but after our first big fight, which Mom masterfully instigated, she went running straight into her arms for support. I never stood a chance against that emotional blackmail." Their anecdotes were eerily similar, seeds of discord planted, allegiances divided, families torn asunder, all through Eloise's insidious machinations. By the time I hung up the phone that night, my path was clear. if this was the only way to wrest back control, to protect my family from the toxicity Eloise represented, then so be it. The next morning at breakfast, I was all sugary smiles as Eloise breezed in. "I've been thinking," I began lightly. "With the baby's arrival getting closer, I really want to clear the air, do something to bring everyone together again as a family." Eloise paused mid-sip of coffee, intrigued by my uncharacteristic olive branch. "Oh, what did you have in mind, dear?" My lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "A family dinner, actually. I think it's time we all had a long, overdue discussion about the future." The night of the family dinner, I was near vibrating with nervous anticipation. Despite my outward calm, it took every ounce of effort to keep my hands from shaking as I set the table. Right on schedule, the doorbell rang. I pulled open the door to find Jillian shifting awkwardly on the front step, her husband Rick beside her. "Thanks for coming," I murmured, ushering them inside. Jillian's expression was tight, her gaze flicking around like a trapped animal. "You're sure about this, Corinne?" Before I could respond, Maya arrived with Patty and Sarah in tow. A chorus of startled greetings filled the air as Eloise swept in from the kitchen. Well, what an unexpected reunion. Her eyes danced between the assembled families, mouth curved in a politically bland smile. "How lovely to have you all here." The calculated pleasantry grated, threatening my hard-won composure. I could see Jillian tense beside me, no doubt reading the same insincerity. Thankfully, Dean chose that moment to join us. "Hey, everyone's here. Should we get started?" I forced a bright smile. Actually, I thought we could wait for the final guests to arrive. Right on cue, the doorbell rang again. This time it was the Conway family, former in-laws who had cut ties with Eloise over a decade ago after an epic blowout regarding their grandchildren. Complete silence reigned as Eloise registered their presence, a muscle twitching in her artificially smooth cheek. "Judith, Thomas, how unexpected." Judith offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Really, Eloise? After all you've put our family through, you can't fathom why we're here." For the first time, I detected a flicker of unease in Eloise's perfectly cultivated mask, but her recovery was as swift as ever, the sickly sweet smile reappearing. Now, let's not let old grudges spoil the evening." "Cut the crap, Mom," Jillian suddenly burst out. All eyes swiveled her way as she took an unconscious step forward. "We're not falling for your gaslighting routine again." Eloise's expression shuddered, eyes glinting with cold fury despite the saccharine tone. "Jillian, darling, whatever are you? You manipulative, lying witch." It was Patty who exploded next, all her grievances bubbling over. "You destroyed my relationship with Sarah just like you tried with these others." The room erupted into a maelstrom of shouting voices, accusations flying, tempers flaring, decades of bitterness and pain unleashed. Through it all, Eloise stood ramrod straight, eyes blazing, veneer of civility disintegrating. At some point, Dean's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough! What the hell is going on here?" An eerie hush followed his bellow. I could see the stunned hurt writ across his features as the reality of the situation dawned. My mouth was dry as chalk, but I knew this was the moment. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my phone and met Eloise's gaze steadily. "You might want to have a seat for this." The first recording began to play, anger and condescension dripping from Eloise's tinny voice as she ranted about me. Then another file, more vicious put-downs and criticisms, and another after that, the damning evidence piling up one after another. Eloise paled, seemingly struck dumb. Dean's expression morphed from disbelief to stunned hurt to white-hot rage, as each new vileness issuing from his mother's lips assailed him. By the time the final recording clicked off, a profound silence had fallen over the room. I could see it all clicking into place for Dean, the missing puzzle pieces, the half-sensed deceptions. Finally he turned to Eloise, face like chiseled stone. "Get out!" Her mouth worked soundlessly as she struggled to find her footing. "Sweetheart, you don't understand." "I said get out!" Dean's roar made us all flinch. "I want you gone, Mom, tonight." To her credit, Eloise didn't argue further, shoulders slumped in rare defeat. She turned and walked out of the dining room, out of our lives. Only then did the euphoric chatter and embraces erupt around me. But all I could feel was the searing ball of hatred still burning in my belly, despite my victory. Because as satisfying as her downfall was, I knew it was only the beginning of making her pay. A tense silence fell over the dining room after Eloise's abrupt exit. I could sense the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions, accusations, and recriminations hanging in the air between Dean and the assembled families. Judith Conway was the first to break it. "Dean, I know this is a shock, but your mother's behavior—" "Don't." Dean's voice was little more than a ragged croak as he held up a hand. "Just don't." He dragged his palm down his face, suddenly looking decades older. When his eyes finally lifted to meet mine, they were haunted. "You knew about all of this vindictiveness, the cruelty." It wasn't quite an accusation, more a pleading for context, for something to make sense of the shattered reality before him. I swallowed hard against the surge of bitterness that welled in my throat. How many times had I tried explaining, only to be brushed aside? But righteous anger would only push him further away now. "I suspected for a while," I admitted quietly, "but I could never get through to you, Dean. Eloise was always able to gaslight me, twist the reality to make me seem irrational." He flinched slightly at her name, then sank heavily into a dining chair. The wariness emanating from him was a physical force. "So that's why you brought everyone here." Rick broke the stilted silence, realization dawning. "To gang up and force the truth." I opened my mouth to protest the callous phrasing, but Patty jumped in quickly. "Not gang up," she said firmly. "Corinne had to take drastic steps because of how thoroughly Eloise isolated us all, divided and conquered to maintain control." A dull flush crept up Dean's neck as he digested her words. I could practically see the pieces clicking into place, memories and long-buried doubts resurfacing to be viewed under a new, but unerringly honest light. Jillian reached across the table, placing a tentative hand over his. "I didn't want to believe it at first either. Not about Mom." Her lips twisted in a rueful approximation of a smile, but her awfulness became impossible to ignore after a while. Dean's jaw clenched hard, eyes glistening with shame, anger, a kaleidoscope of volatile emotions. When he spoke again, the words emerged muffled, as if forced between gritted teeth. "All this time? The horrible things she said about you." His haunted gaze found mine again, as the gravity of his betrayal seemed to crash over him in waves. While I just stood by and let her, a pregnant pause lingered as the accusation remained unspoken. In that moment, I could have lashed out, unleashed the full fury of my spite and grievances upon him. But something in his ravaged expression stayed my tongue. Because as righteous as my anger burned, his anguish ran equally deep. My husband had been gaslit, masterfully manipulated by a toxic parent, just like the others in this room. His world had been upended as thoroughly as mine once was, so instead of dealing further blows, I rose and crossed to where he sat, slumped. Ignoring the others' questioning stares, I reached out and drew his head against my stomach, cradling him against the swell of my pregnancy. "It's going to be okay," I murmured, feeling his ragged breaths against my abdomen. "We're going to be okay." Dean stiffened for a moment, then seemed to melt into my embrace like a marionette with its strings cut. I stroked his hair lightly as his shoulders began to shake with silent sobs, offering him this rare shelter and solace. This was a new beginning, I realized, one built on a foundation of brutal truth, but truth nonetheless. Whatever came next, we would face it together as partners rather than adversaries. The cycle of toxicity and deception was broken. That night, as we fell into an exhausted sleep tangled in each other's arms, I understood the true cost of vengeance was not violence or hatred, but mercy. Mercy hard-won and bestowed upon the humbled. Only then could the past be laid to rest, making way for a brighter future. In the weeks after Eloise's banishment, an uneasy calm descended over our household. Dean and I walked on eggshells around each other, both still processing the cataclysmic shift in our reality. He spent long hours at work, as if immersing himself in familiar routines could undo Eloise's ruinous legacy. When he was home, a brittle tension crackled between us, both skirting the emotional minefield her deceptions had laid. I understood his withdrawal, his need to compartmentalize. God knew I'd erected my own fortresses over the years to survive Eloise's psychological warfare. But even those thick-walled defenses were straining under the weight of all that had transpired. The turning point came one night over a stilted dinner of reheated leftovers. Dean set down his fork with a dull clank. "This isn't working." I froze mid-bite, heart jackrabbiting as terrible scenarios flickered through my mind. Was this the moment our marriage finally buckled, shattered by the strain of Eloise's machinations? But when I met his gaze, I saw only weary resolution. We can't keep living like this, Corinne. Tiptoeing around each other, sidestepping what happened. He exhaled a frustrated breath, raking a hand through his hair. I don't know where to start unraveling the tangled mess my mother created. But I do know shutting you out again isn't the answer. Something inside me unclenched at his words. I'm not going anywhere, I said impulsively. We'll get through this together. Dean's lips twitched in a reluctant half-smile as he reached across the table for my hand. Together. I like the sound of that. From that point, the walls between us began to gradually dismantle. In their place, an honest dialogue emerged, one founded on empathy, patience, and a mutual desire to shed Eloise's corrosive influence once and for all. Over long conversations, all the hurts and betrayals were slowly exhumed. The constant belittling, the manufactured conflicts designed to drive wedges, the insidious gaslighting that had us both questioning our reality. Laying it all bare was an excruciatingly painful process. But with each buried wound exposed and lanced, I felt lighter, more whole. Roles reversed too, as Dean opened up with a raw vulnerability I'd never witnessed before. He spoke of being the idealized son, the golden child who could never escape Eloise's web of demands and criticisms despite his devotion. I think a part of me always longed for her approval, he confessed haltingly, which is why I was so blind to her cruelties, no matter who tried warning me. In turn, I divulged the bone-deep fears Eloise had awoken, of being alone and outmatched as a new mother, of tainting our child's upbringing with echoes of the dysfunction that marred my own childhood. You saved me from that, I admitted, cradling my rounded belly. Saved us both. By the time the last of our lacerations had been cleansed and bound, I felt closer to Dean than I had in years. Not simply spouses united by domesticity, but partners buckling back to withstand the onslaught of trauma. Our bedroom became a sanctuary again, a sacred space reclaimed from the toxic taint of Eloise's influence. Physical intimacy took on new, profound dimensions as we relearned each other's boundaries and needs. Countless tender moments stitched past wounds into a new, stronger whole. The nursery, too, was an exercise in co-creation. Dean and I labored side by side, meticulously outfitting the space with every necessity, and not a single item imposed by his mother's interference. We emerged scarred, yes, but also formidably unified, an immovable bulwark erected to deflect any resurgence of Eloise's malice. When our daughter arrived 2 months later, squalling and perfect, we were girded for the challenges ahead. Absolutely nothing would disrupt the hard-won peace of our newly reclaimed lives. As I cradled my newborn's warmth against my chest, I knew this child would never want for security, stability, love. Those insidious cycles of toxicity ended with us. Eloise's shadow no longer touched this family. We had stepped finally into the light.
The air conditioner's gentle hum in my workspace stood out sharply from the whirlwind of ideas racing through my head. I'm a lawyer named Anna, and I'm 28 years old. It's a far way from the chaos of my early years, a past I even kept hidden from my closest friends and family. The calmness of the ringing shattered my office. On my phone, the screen revealed an indeterminate quantity, but something about it felt unsettlingly similar to a cautious hand. I spoke in response. I spoke up. Speak with a combination of expertise and Anna. Be careful. Your father has arrived. There was an anxiousness in the voice that didn't do anything to stop my rising fear. A shiver went through me. More than 10 years had passed since my last heard that voice. A once meaningful voice, loving care, but has turned into a symbol of grief and betrayal. Why are you contacting me? I asked to speak for myself, severing with precision. During the quiet that ensued after his first things first, I'm having problems. Anna, I need financial assistance from you. He mentioned his voice breaking somewhat his request, even though it maybe started a fire of bitterness within of me. My contribution now I shot back after all these years. Belief and rage coexisted in my tone. To be sure, but if it weren't, I'm in a real pickle. continuing Ed's deteriorating, desperate state. His voice, "You've long since ceased to be my father. You can't just phone me right now, and you may count on my assistance," I answered vocally. Chilly, and there was a steady pause on the line, a thick stillness that resembled an irreconcilable divide. "Anna, please. I'm still." Your father made a pathetic attempt to renewing an old friendship. Putting out the word "Dad" felt strange, almost startling. "A father, you lost that title," I remarked when you chose her over me. The years of grief and resentment being incorporated into my speech. "I believed you were mistaken, my daughter." I spoke up and stopped him. "Halfway through, you made your decision years." His voice was years ago, and now that I've made mine, a mixture of desperation and begging. "Hello, Anna. I'm sorry, but I need your help once." "I'm sorry" reverberated through my office like a hollow and pointless apologies don't alter historical events. "I'm unable to assist you." Declared forcefully and disconnected my childhood. Before the age of 10, I was occupied with laughter and love are evidence of the I had a fantastic existence with my parents. Within our modest rental home, my mom ray of happiness and compassion lit our warm days, and our evenings with tales and dreams. My dad used to be silly, and an understanding man would play all night, playing games or giving me small lessons. The world's things, our house was a happy cocoon where each day was an exploration, and each evening a lovely dream. But our comfortable existence came to an end. Sudden end following my mother's premature. The mansion that used to resound with death, love, and laughter became quiet. A portion of recollections, I strolled through the rooms. Every nook serves as a sharp reminder of it was an awful loss without her. Not only for myself, but also for my dad, who, having lost his beloved life, yet the intensity of his sorrow appeared to decline swiftly. Much to my confusion and shock, in a matter of moments, months later, he brought Marissa, a woman, home, who was going to play a big part in our life. I remember the moment he brought, a day that signified the conclusion of my treasured childhood. "Anna, this is Marissa. She intends to remain with one evening," my father declared, his voice lacking the warmth that I so. I looked up at her, accustomed to this, looking for a little maternal warmth, but discovered none in her. Her towering appearance, her icy stare, and starting at the very beginning, noticed a difference in the atmosphere, one that gave me an inexplicable feeling of fearful hello. "Anna," Marissa called out, silky but lacking in a genuine sense. The smile seemed to soothe rather than conceal a terrible element behind its reveal themselves. In the days that followed, the home seemed altered, as though the walls, they were pulling away from her presence. The happy recollections of the time appeared to slip away, giving way to a persistent discomfort that permeated every corner. I recall glancing at Marissa, searching for a redeeming thing or thoughtful of her, yet her appearance, the motion appeared to contain an unsaid hatred. It was evident that she wasn't keen to take up the space left by my mother. Nonetheless, to create a new story in which I was an awkward aspect of her that I observed. Stroll around our house, which used to felt content and safe. I was unable to assist, however, felt as though her coming was only the start of a particular thing. Unsettling, the way she gazed at me with eyes with a tendency to conceal more than they revealed was not encouraging for the future. The time after Marissa's arrivals resembled strolling via a nightmare from which I was unable to awaken. There was a time when my mother's love and laughter felt chilly now. Marissa's unwelcome presence created a shadow covering all that, transforming even the easiest daily schedules into a sequence of battles. While having breakfast one morning, my dinner seemed abnormally salty, I noted. "Marissa, did you overseason it with salt?" This, my voice inquired. Hesitant, "Did I?" "It has to be an error, Anna. Eat it, don't be so picky," she shot back, her voice disdainful. Nearly jesting, the occurrences increased in frequency. Additionally resentful, I recall discovering my clothes destroyed following a laundry. "Marissa, all of my clothing is faded," the question I posed one day. displaying my old favorite outfit, now stained and unfit. She took a quick look at it and, with a shrug casually, perhaps the washing machine is misbehaving, or maybe it's time you give up wearing such juvenile attire. Garments, a wave of annoyance swept through me, but further arguments would exacerbate the situation. Worse, I felt powerless and resorted to my father, expecting him to be able to look past her. Marissa, the fixad dad, is destroying my stuff. She mistreats me every time. One, I said. Evening, trembling with a combination of fury, and my dad's response was rather, compared to my expectations, Anna, you're thinking that Marissa is abusing her to assimilate into our family and cease causing problems. He stated sharply, his remarks cutting deep. But that's the reality, Dad. Protest attempt. But he refused to listen. Anna, that's enough. I'm not interested in to hear your allegations repeated, said, his voice erupting with rage at each day was difficult to traverse. Concerning Marissa's animosity and my dad's apathy toward the place that previously felt like home. I felt like a jail instead of a haven. I began to spend more time in my chamber, attempting to get away from the ongoing stress that was suspended in the air residing in that scary mansion. I felt isolated and misinterpreted the security and contentment that previously occupied those walls were in place of dread and worry daily. I yearned for the days gone by, for the occasions when my mom's grin was sufficient to illuminate the entire space. Striking contrast with the current gloom, lurked around every corner, coexisting alongside. Marissa turned into a daily struggle to avoid. Additionally, perseverance, her hatred for me grew from insults to physical attacks, torture. It began with a gentle pinch on my arm or a twist in my abdomen every time. In areas that are readily hidden beneath my garments, the hurt was brutal and intense. A prompting of my powerlessness in her presence, I devised plans to stay away from. She is aware of her location at all times. I used to drive vast distances inside the house to hold off till she is in another room. Before, despite my best efforts, I moved around. Sometimes I was taken off guard by her. And those instances invariably led to experiencing any discomfort one day when I was reading in silence in the living room. When Marissa entered, there was no apparent reason to pinch my arm firmly using her nails. I winced in agony as it dug into my skin, but suppressed any cries of protest. She gave me a chilly glance, a victorious grin before moving away on one of Grandma's infrequent visits. She observed my circumspect moves and how I recoiled at the sound of Marissa's voice. Anna is resonating throughout the home. Grandma, everything is well at home? Questioned, a worried tone in her voice. I stared at her, wanting to tell her so badly, the truth to her, but fear and the need to. I restrained myself so as not to cause her anxiety. Yes, Grandma, I'm back. Everything is all right. I told her I had a lot of schoolwork, but I wasn't using a fake smile. She appeared uncertain, yet didn't push any harder. I experienced a touch of shame for tricking her, yet I was unable to bear the idea of upsetting her in any way. Dismay that night when Grandmother departed. I noticed Marissa observing her through the glass. Expression of contentment it was as if she had enjoyed knowing that she influenced me. I would have suffered harm, and succeeded in doing so. Her victorious expression strongly indicated she was the one in charge, and I was utterly defenseless. Participant in her twisted game, I felt like going back to my room, enmeshed in a vicious cycle of silence and cruelty. The actual discomfort caused by Marissa's pinches and turns were tolerable in contrast to the mental chaos. I thought of school as my haven, a place where I might momentarily forget the suffering of my domestic life. However, even there, the outlines of my problems at home started to come through. Mrs. Thompson, my instructor, is a good-hearted person, a woman who constantly gave her students encouragement. One day, I began to detect changes in myself. When I turned in my homework, she firmly gripped my wrist while focusing on my arm's bruises. What, Anna? Occurred here? These resemble bruises, She claimed that worry was in her voice. I swiftly retracted my arm, enveloping my sleeve is bruised. Nothing at all, Mrs. Thompson. I collapsed. I pretended to be lying while dodging her stare. Mrs. Thompson averted her gaze. Persuaded Anna, should there be any incorrect, or if someone is harming you, can inform me of the significance of speaking up. She asked her eyes to look for the reality that I desire to reveal to her, give her all the details regarding Marissa and how I was always afraid, yet the words failed to flow, so I pushed "I'm all right." Mrs. Thompson honestly grinned. It was only a careless mishap. She presented me with a long, introspective glance, followed by a nod gradually. "Okay, Anna, but keep in mind the door is never closed." "You're not by yourself," remarked, smiling consolingly at me. I nodded as a knot started to grow in my throat. Her generosity added to it, challenging to keep up the facade that everything went smoothly, as I particular day, Mrs. Thompson's walk home. Phrases replayed in my head. I experienced a mixture of appreciation for her thoughtfulness and the feeling of isolation brought on by bearing my burdens by itself. The idea of disclosing the reality. At home, my existence was horrifying, and I worried about the outcomes. What Marissa would do if she became aware of it had mentioned. I was silent that evening, having supper with someone. Pondering Mrs. Thompson's words offered to assist Marissa when I became speechless. "Why is everyone quiet tonight? Anna Kitty received your tongue," she questioned mockingly. I just shook my head and carried on with my meal, attempting to minimize my size and imperceptible as possibilities while I lay in bed after supper. The truth of my circumstances felt more and more than ever formidable. Mrs. Thompson's concern had convinced me that individual's the problem, but the dread of what exposes the maybe the truth prevented me from speaking. I was between the desperate need to communicate someone and Marissa's fear of it takes balance to retaliate. I traversed daily the day my instructor, Mrs. Thompson, chose to include me in Father's Day was a day full of stress and fear for me. In the principal's office, I'd office twitching uncomfortably, my thoughts frantically worrying about how my father would respond if he ever made it to his stern face revealed a mixture of annoyance and humiliation. "What's up with Anna? Are you calling me to come to your school?" With a strong voice, he demanded this. He entered. My eyes slid to Mrs. Thompson. Looking for some reassurance, I swallowed hard and searched for my voice. Dad and Mrs. Thompson observed what she saw. "Bruises," I stumbled, sensing the burden of his stare before I could respond. Moreover, he suppressed his rage. "Tangible." "What are you talking about, bruises? Once more, you are inventing stories." Mrs. Thompson intervened, speaking sternly, yet composed. "Mr. Smith, I'm worried about Anna's condition, and the bruises on her arm do not appear unintentional, which needs to be addressed." My father's expression darkened slightly with anger. "At home, she is pretty safe. Anna, are you misrepresenting our family?" Turning to face me, he looked disappointed. Let loose the tears I'd been holding in, began to leak. "Dad, it's not a lie. Marissa has been injuring me." I was able to exit the truth at last emerging. His response was one of complete "Marissa, it's unbelief that's absurd. She has only shown kindness. I will not allow you to accuse her in your eyes. Using these charges, but the facts are actual." Dad called out, pleading with him to accept it. With a start, he got up, his patient. "Tell Mrs. that you're wearing this too thin." "Thompson, all of that was made up." I dutifully faced the instructor and reiterated his. She nodded again without speaking. Anything while returning home empty-handed, said another way. He kept me trapped in my room. Using the door, I could perceive Marissa's voice brimming with deceptive worry. "I told you that she's only looking for." I sat on my bed, she added, paying attention, having a strong sense of loneliness and sorrow at the one person I believed I could guarantee that he had turned the walls of my room, which are facing me, had previously seemed to be my haven, but now I lay there feeling like I was inside a prison. there reflecting on all that had occurred as a result of the physical abuse's suffering, was insignificant in contrast to the agony of not being believed, and my father punished me. It was a severe understanding that the individual who was meant to adore and guard me unwaveringly was now the origin of my deepest agony in the days after my confinement. Among the darkest were those in my chamber. Had already felt imprisoned entirely and helpless. I realized that my only chance lay. On my mother's side, my granny was a compassionate and loving woman with always been kind to me, but I never thought to bother her with my problems one night at home while I was my father and Marissa had their hands full. I plucked up the bravery to give I was shaking my hands, Grandma, as I dialed her phone number. Hi, her reassuringly warm voice said. Over the phone. Anna here, Grandma. Stated, attempting to maintain a steady tone. Anna, how are you, my love? She questioned her style. Tears filled with sincere concern welled up. When I answered, Grandma, I knee in my eyes. I would like to remain with you for although there was a brief period of stillness on what went wrong with Anna on the other end, I had an experience. Therefore, I took a deep breath, words flying out of my mouth. It's Marissa has harmed Mom and Dad. Won't accept me. I am still trying to figure out what to do. Her voice carried concern, which I could perceive as. She answered right away, of course, my love. You immediately approach. I will attend to the day my grandmother arrived was this one. Even though she was little, her presence filled the space. She faced my dad, with a strength that took me by surprise. John, Anna isn't coming with me. Safe here, she proclaimed. With firmness, my father retreated and attempted to Mom. You can't just take her, I argue. She's your daughter, mine, and you unable to defend, she retorted. Acerbic, I refused to observe her. Marissa attempted to step in, but she's merely a kid inventing tales. You are unable to have faith in her instead of us. Grandma looked at Marissa's gaze. Steely, I can tell when a child is afraid. I'm bringing one, Anna, and if you attempt to halt me, I'll take this issue up with the officials. My father became aware that he was beaten and gave up trying to fight back. Opposition when I grabbed my belongings, I noticed. Marissa went from having a stubborn expression to overcoming stepping outside the home with my grandmother. I had a release of weight. Shoulders. I felt safe for the first time in months. It was a calm drive to Grandma's house, although her existence was consoling. When we got there, she turned to me and told me, Anna, you're secure now. I'm no longer concerned about my grandmother's home. I experienced the affection and protection that had been absent from my life serve as a haven for my healing, and used the contrast to regain my strength. Between her nourishing house and my father's home was glaringly cold. First time in a very long time. Sensed that my breathing had returned. Escaped the worry and fear that had troubled me. It had been years since I had gone. To reside at my father's house with my granny, the place she lived in sanctuary, a haven of love and healing. But time has moved on, and with it created a fresh wave of transformation in my cherished grandma departed, leaving a gap that seems impossible at the funeral that Marissa and my father attended. Their features, a mixture of fake sadness and ill-dressed zeal. It was apparent they were more interested in the potential benefits of rather than lamenting her death. Morning following the funeral, as we assembled at Marissa, I wasted no time at my grandmother's house. Timing nicely, Anna. I assume you'll be finding a new place to live now. House and everything in it belongs to your father, now, she said in her voice, tinted with a barely concealed glee. My father nodded in accord, eyes surveying the room as if already planning what to do with the house. Couldn't help but smile, a reaction that seemed to confuse them. Actually, that's where you're wrong, I said, the confidence in my voice, taking them by surprise. What do you mean, my father? Inquired, his visage turning to one of bewilderment. I took a long breath, enjoying the moment. Grandma left a will. She bequeathed the house and a considerable amount of money to me, I explained, observing as their expressions altered. from bewilderment to startled. But you're just a child. I'm your father. I should be in charge of the inheritance you receive. My father sputtered, his sense of entitlement evident. Marissa chimed in her voice, shrilly stating, "Until you come of age, your father will handle your property well." Prospects, their reactions were almost amusing. "You don't care about me. So much that you didn't even wish me a happy day. I turned 18 a month ago. I'm legally an adult now, and I make my own decisions," I stated firmly, relishing the face of awareness to dawning on their fronts. My father's expression shifted from shock to rage, then to a sort of desperate pleading. "Anna, you can't do. This is your family." I glanced at their memories of my childhood flooding back. "You paused. Being my family a long time ago," I remarked. My voice is steady. Marissa stepped forward, her tone now imploring, "At least let us stay in the house. We have nowhere else to go. We have not extended the lease of our residence." I shook my head. "This is my house currently. You'll need to find somewhere else." As they left, the weight of years of pain and neglect appeared to lift my shoulders. I stood in the house that was as mine, a place loaded with memories of my grandmother's love, and felt a sense of closure. The echoes of the past, my father's call stirred remained. I sat their phone in. Hand sensation, a tumult of feelings, wrath, betrayal, and a sense of injustice. But amid all that, there was also a sense of strength and a reminder of the resilience that had carried me through the depths of times. "Oh, I had assumed that Mom had a ton of. I told you I had money saved up, didn't I? Her out by now. What's the use of allowing the unemployed parasite to remain here? Since moving here 3 months ago, my savings were washed out by my son and his spouse. I was done with them treating me like a mate. With everything, so I quickly and silently went. I was phoned by my son. 'Mom, what's up?' Tony seemed desperate when he spoke on the phone. Then something I had done had turned into headlines from around the country. 'My name is Sarah, and I'm 70 years old. Been residing in France for a while. However, things got worse with my heel, so I returned to my native United States. Unit was vacant, so I contacted to see if I might help my son and his wife remain with them temporarily. Tony, my only 44-year-old lone son, works in an office employee. Neither he nor his spouse Alice do have children, and they appear to depart silently. While I was away, we lost contact, but I opted to get back in touch, and Tony appeared to happy to hear from me. I have described my situation and requested permission to remain for. Tony hesitantly admitted after a while that it was uncomfortable to force upon them, yet the joint. Seeing my family again brought me more joy than my hesitations, laced with a hint of anxiety. And joy, I rode in a taxi from the airport to their residence upon my arrival. Alice and Tony welcomed me to the Tony appeared content as Alice made her arrival. Was clearly upset, and I intend to stay here. For some months, my possessions will be delivered later. With my carry-on luggage, I headed to the living room. We spoke about our everyday lives and employment in addition to my most recent French life. Tony inquired as to why I had relocated to. I mentioned earlier that I'm getting older in France. Wish to take in the French countryside scenery. Tummy chuckled, but Alice didn't change. Then we spoke about my health problems. Experiencing extreme lightheadedness, and was the minor's illness can be the cause of a seizure happens. Folks might not be able to stand as a result of the surroundings being spinning and possibly experiencing nausea. Felt uneasy being by myself, thus I desired to remain with them till my circumstances stabilizes. Following a discussion, I had returned to the entryway to retrieve my items from my carry-on. While I was arranging my belongings in the hallway, overheard Alice and Tony talking. "Are you really going to let Sarah go, Tony? Staying puts me against living with an elderly. Come on, woman, you are too. She's my mom. Part-time, so you won't necessarily certainly be present. But what about our days? I want to know how long she plans to stay off. Her gone, don't speak that way, mother will. When you finally depart, We can talk about money. Just keep it quiet tomorrow. She might hear you, but she's too elderly to listen to us. Bring keen ears to detect slights. And their IEES dropped out of the discussion in, I apologize for imposing in the chilly hallway. Tommy and his spouse, so all of a sudden Yes, it's a major hassle for them. However, you should know that I'm pretty content right now. Chatting with Tony and his spouse. Following the years spent apart, when Tony was small, I was a single mother raising him. Following the death of my husband, Tony experienced his fair share of hardships. Coping with disease and everything isn't making up for it. But I was hoping to attend here to express my thanks and regrets. I came to this residence for that reason. It's a regret that I'm not welcome, but they have to live their own lives. Therefore, I visited that I tried to relax into the guest room they gave me. Next morning, Tony departed from my troubled heart. For work, and Alice and I were alone. As I was working on some crafts on the sofa, Alice was in the living room in front of me. Hey Sarah, please stop creating such a mess. Glancing around, I saw remnants of cloth and haphazardly placed threads. I'm sorry. Do you know what this is that I cleaned it up? I showed her the little bag I was making. On it, I had a small green turtle design. This is a turtle-themed purse. I adore turtles. I create small crabs with a turtle motif. Even features a zipper on its exterior. That's good, but Sarah, just relax. During the day, Alice interrupted me. Clearly bored inside, looking very much at. When I'm off, at least go somewhere else. You're obstructing me from my part-time work. But if I go outside too, I get lightheaded. Much, I'll take you to the adjacent community center to remain there throughout the day, and I have household responsibilities. Without allowing for further discussion, Alice stated, he kept on helping out with the responsibilities. You're not be reading while you're here. The least you can do given that we're permitting you to stay, do some instead of crafts. Laundry and cleaning eventually astounded me. Murmured, all right, and then gently stood up. From then on, I completed all day. Even though I was woozy and hurt, I took on the housework. Tony and Alice handled me. Alice appeared more like a housekeeper. Addicted to social media all the time. It appeared from her phone that she hadn't been completing the housework before I. Did you bring your mother with you that night? Upon Tommy's arrival at home, his banking card spoke to me with a smile that I don't. Although you live with us, living is expensive. Could you add something? I glanced over at Tony. I nodded at my reading glasses and got up. Took my handmade banking card out. Pouch and gave it to Tony, who he examined. Quickly, his expression stiffened as he waited. Mom, have you saved anything else but this? Accounts are all I have. They are unnecessary. A great deal at my age, no chronic diseases, or whatever I stated while grinning as the talk went on, and Tony's expression. This is not enough money, darkish man. Not even 10,000, as you claim to be alive. Huge overseas. So I thought Tony maintained asking persistently whether I had any more money, so I said no, and he sighed. Shrugged his shoulders. Okay, I'll wait. For the time being, I'm giving you a kindly allow you to reside here, since this is the very least that you could do following my bank account password was taken by Tony, and debit cards, departing from the space that as I lay in bed at night, I could hear Tony tooting through the dividing wall. Our rooms, what a disappointment. Completely believed that Mom was wealthy. Actually, the household is losing money. I should not have allowed her to stay and see me. Told you to get rid of her already. Unemployed moocher does not benefit us. Regardless of how the two of them seemed. Sure, I couldn't hear people speaking openly in the adjacent room, or perhaps they desired me. I was listening to them in my chilly bed, keeping back lonely tears and sadness. The following day, due to Alice's day off, she took me to the neighborhood center. I unzipped my duffel bag to keep up my maintenance in the living room, but discovered I was no longer in the necessary cloth at home, so I was hesitant, but I was unable to beg Alice to return and retrieve. Thankfully, My discomfort was under control today. I was familiar with this region, so I opted to stroll home in order to obtain when the fabric did arrive. I looked via the veranda into Alice's home, and an unknown male were present at. I initially believed him to be a guest, but they appeared very close, so I hesitated. Ate outside for a little before returning without going into the residence, which is why they want my departure, so that I wouldn't reopen the affair. While in the community center, my thoughts kept concerning Alice and those men and chose to call someone for guidance going forward. Refrained from discussing the men and kept communicating with Tony and his wife. But every time I went out of the house residence, I would boldly display a crimson turtle pouch on the brink of existence, room side table after 3 months, ever since I moved in with Tony's. By now, my family had become the homes built during my time there. I had a ton of things to perform at home, and when Alice was at home, so I was put in the community center. The majority of my savings had tired of Tony, a man with age addicted to gambling and spent the most of his spare time to play the lotto, and slots seemed to be his obsession with money. Originated from the financial difficulties he's suffering as a child. I first made an attempt to act, but ultimately obtained. Bringing it up always made him 3 months later, I was at my breaking point. Before a lengthy weekend one evening, I chose to bring a piece of equipment I had been taking Tony Alice into consideration. I appreciate that you, Tony, please let me stay with you. I know I made your life difficult when you were. Sorry, I was young and didn't have much money. For all the hassle I've brought about, but I'm with gratitude. I took out a handmade turtle bag from the table. It had a green color and this shell zipper serves as a reminder of, I hope you will both feel my thanks. You'll like to take it in defiance of neither Alice nor Tony had any expectations, expressed any curiosity about my artisanal pouch. Mom, have we really reached our limit? Consider the French account when you have money. I informed you, Tony, that we are out of luck. I put a lot of effort into this. Please accept it as a symbol of my love. Keep in mind how joyful you were when you were little. I used to feel the shell with some chocolates and small cash. Tony begins to become more displeased. I'm not a child anymore. Pleased to get such a thing. Sarah, for how long are you planning to stay? To genuinely swindle us. It annoys us. Tony and his spouse cast me in a chilly light. I frantically begged Tony, do you remember? Joe was the one who helped us in that old. We resided in an apartment that I don't recall to quit bringing up the past. Are we done being silently stunned? I tightened my grip on the turtle pouch and examined the papers feel inside the tomorrow. Tony and his spouse embark on a holiday leaving me behind, as I had anticipated, leaving the house following yesterday's talk, so I hurriedly packed my luggage with the designated courier and dispatched them, going for my French home. I also do not forget to insert the red turtle pouch. My carry-on bag. I jot down a brief note that thank you and depart from the table, the residence where I had spent 3 months later. I never went back home. Instead, I remained in the United States hotel for a little since I had tasks to complete, and Tony and his spouse seemed to get in touch with me. Eventually, true enough, after roughly 2 weeks, Tony calls Mom later. Let's head to the turtle pouch. Isn't that yours? Tony yells into the phone, hearing his words. You saw that I wasn't shocked when I observed the turtle incident on the news. Bag that I intended to present to Tony and his wife found a $1 check inside. Million was my method of expressing gratitude for all of their actions and to express regret for all the mischief I made when I was younger. Some may consider it superficial to a ton with cash, but I had imagined the day I may gift it to them after modestly storing enough. I did some excavating a little over 40 years ago, prior to finally running into Tony and discovered that he owed money. Attempted to settle bills from gambling with additional gaming only to find himself Descending further, he had a reliable employment I just desired, that he pay off his debts, and they were unwilling to go in peace, though. Acknowledge my gesture fully, forgotten about their generosity shown to me and my family. Thus I made the decision to split $1 million in checks, modest amounts, and made charitable donations and welfare associations worldwide. America, where I put the gifts, created a turtle bag by hand and delivered it. The turtle pouch became an anonymous sensation, trending and generating headlines. A social media user named Alice. That's the turtle pouch, mommy, mate, right? That implies you intended to give us one. Rich as well, yep, just that was my means of expressing gratitude to you. And I apologize for creating both the pocket and putting the cash aside to donate to. You could have, in fact, claimed that we would have accepted if you had not wanted to. If you don't need my money, then my sentiments. Tony was either shouting into the phone. Utterly insane, how much is that? Would you dare trick me and return it? Became inattentive and removed the phone away from my ear in a little amount of time, said, "All right, relax, you're offering. There's another turtle, and I have a headache. And it's yours if you truly desire it." Tony at last calmed down and restated his craving for the turtle that we decided to meet in a cafe afterwards on the day I went. The final red turtle within a package to Tony and his spouse met where we'd already present and made a money demand prior to my actually sitting down when Tony silently removed the red turtle. Grabbed it right away, unzipping it's not a check, but rather a little shell. Electrical gadget. What the devil is this? Tony tinkled with the unclear gadget. He discovered a small button, and when Ellie pressed it, a voice started to play. Standing beside Tony right away, Alter Hugh, seated close to Tony Alice's face, altered upon hearing a speech recording. It was Alice's voice, cordially speaking with something about another man who wasn't Tony. This explains why Alice's situation appeared to ultimately understand that it was a video showing her having an affair at. She attempted to steal the recorder at home from Tony's palm, although Tony clung to it. As they struggled, unlocked it. I brought an envelope and spread it out numerous photographs of Alice on the table, cheating at home on another man provided with unquestionable proof. Alice became agitated and asked Ming why. Why did Tony pick up each picture individually? Analyzing them carefully ever since I arrived at things felt strange about your home. A buddy suggested that I hire a detective to find out and even made the offer to pay for them. What's the issue, and why would you do it? It's sad that you are my son's wife. To believe relatives are lying to one another. When you're older, you will comprehend. I suppose fate brought me here to learn. Alice, have you been unfaithful to me? I've been with you ever since Tony got your personal secrets. If you're placing the blame for cheating on her, you should fuck off. What about the fact that I have never cheated? Tony, your debt fell silent, and it's now. When it was Alice's turn to talk, how about you? Throwing away all of your cash on gambling. Just make use of the funds you and I have. Your part-time work, thus you ought to. Some cash while taking in their squabble. This pair had managed to get their eyesight, to maintain its unity up until this point. Neither of Tony. Do you have any money? You have $40,000. Dead Alice, you've dedicated all of your profits to your partner in affairs that I had. The investigator also looks into your financial situation. Tony and Alice were both taken aback, and they started yelling at one another, and I was stunned when I initially heard the inquiry findings show that this pair was on the verge of bankruptcy. But we can make it. Return the money if we get Mum's funds. Now give it to us. I've given all that's left is this red money. Turtle statue, which he destroyed in my recall what happened to savings and gambling. You're not serious about all that in range. Tony sprang across the table at me. Other clients began to focus. And the employees rushed past the $1 million is mine. It was intended for me to give it back quickly. The cops needed to be summoned to hold Tony until the police spoke some common reason to him. They graciously took me back to my hotel because of my worries regarding Tony's combative conduct. 1 week later, Tony and Annalie, the partnership has declined. Repair as a result of their financial situation obtained. Tony, a divorced man, is now even more single. Engrossed in gaming a scene more than he was discovered attempting to steal company funds. He was spared from prosecution, but was let go, which worsened his anger at the cafe. Was recorded on producing a video and sharing it on social media. He has trouble finding another work. Unable to take the disgrace, Tony disconnected every interaction and vanished following Alice's divorce, moved into an ancient house with no one to rely on, living alone in a public housing unit. Prior to my being able to donate to the turtle rescue is visible in my blog post. Ridiculing my own turtle became widely known. Alice began to experience intimidation and sexting. It ultimately extended to her part-time. Even the man she worked with and got her fired was involved in an affair and became weary of her and now departed without a paycheck. She is receiving temporary support for dependent. Following that, I went back to my family's. Once I'd finished unpacking, back home in France, I put on a dress in my apartment. The ease of practice while I was going over certain work pages where I heard a sound. The entrance appeared to be Joe, my roommate. Had arrived back home, Madame President. Hello again, and how was your journey? After a long absence, Joe arrived in America with grinning. He puts down his luggage and coat. Joe, who is 75 years old, lived in the same residential building where my son lives. Tony and I used to live together years ago. Was battling poverty after losing my spouse and taking care of a young Tony, asthmatic. We were without utilities and without anybody to ask for help. I was desperate and thought of giving up on everything. Joe and his spouse were upstairs. Our neighbors were the ones who saved us. Lifelines, give me a ring. I'm back, Sarah. And see, I brought a ton of, wow, all of my faith mementos, thank you. I'll bring a few to the storytelling gathering. Joe, see you tomorrow at the community center? Looked over each of the accumulated mementos. His happy expression on the table after we, having regained our footing, Joe and his, years after the wife moved away for employment, we encountered one another in the city, and I started assisting with a program of support for the poor, on whom Joe had established. Joe's wife had already died by then, so we began collaborating as a company life partners. I have been in charge of the structure after Joe left a few years ago. Years back, what was once a tiny Joe and M's venture has developed into an extensive international organization. In the last 30 years, we've been concentrating on assisting lone mods in racing a few years before moving to France. Passed to examine their advanced assistance systems, even though we gain a lot of recognition. In France, our reach is still limited. Acknowledged in America, I intend to grow our plans there shortly and desire to invest time in Tony's family as only a mother before they learned about my work. In the end, I was unable to obtain them to comprehend my feelings, but that's their decision, even if it was just temporary. I was content to act as if for a family even though I'm 70 years old today. It's even at 70, I still have a lot of wants, and I have to strengthen my back in order to attire and started considering my worldwide speech in support of. Next day,
I acquired a $50,000 house using the elderly man's funds, and Vivian proudly displayed her bank book, boasting about the purchase. Despite my attempts to maintain composure and avoid surprise, laughter overcame me. In response to her inquiry about my amusement, I continued laughing openly. The eldest son's wife seemingly aimed to leave me speechless, but instead of retorting, I chuckled unabashedly before regaining my composure. I looked at her and, with a touch of sympathy, uttered, "Sorry for you. My name is Rita, and since marrying my husband, who is a decade my senior, I've been a subject of gossip. He was already affluent, owning multiple companies and substantial wealth. Marrying a significantly older man, especially one with such financial standing, led people to assume I was after his money. However, I genuinely never coveted his wealth. In reality, my husband grew up in poverty after his father's disappearance due to gambling. Living in the same apartment complex where I was the landlord's daughter, we became childhood companions. As a child, I confessed my feelings to him, only to be rejected with laughter and a promise to reconsider when I was older. Even when he moved to New York, we continued corresponding. Despite my repeated confessions, he maintained the stance that I was too young. Our communication persisted even through high school, where he expressed surprise at my continued affection. Upon graduating high school and starting university, I confessed once more, receiving a response that he'd consider my confession once I broadened my perspectives in university. Throughout my 4 university years, my feelings for him remained unwavering. Upon graduation, I confessed again, and this time, he bashfully acknowledged my consistent love. At 23, I began working while he, at 33, garnered attention for his thriving business ventures in New York. Eager to marry, he promised to do so once his company achieved success. Living together at the time, I diligently attended to household chores and prepared his favorite meals, awaiting his return. There were moments of doubt about his feelings, but when questioned, he admitted to initially considering my affection a childhood crush. Surprised by my persistent confessions in high school and college, he began to feel shy and self-aware of his feelings. Despite concerns during my college years that I might find someone else, he assured me he had no time for romance due to intense focus on studying and overcoming his impoverished background. Both of us remained confident that we would never betray each other. We always had a harmonious relationship, even amidst the news of various couples in our circle going through divorces. The concept of divorce seemed distant and irrelevant to us. With my husband amassing a $12 million fortune, some people, aware of our 10-year age gap, assumed I married him for his wealth or speculated about insurance benefits upon his demise. While some understood our long history together since my infancy and didn't jump to such conclusions, there were those who stubbornly clung to misguided beliefs. Despite the occasional gossip during social gatherings, where people assumed my husband had never experienced poverty and unfairly judged us based on societal assumptions about privilege, I remained unfazed. Whenever I noticed disapproving looks from my husband, I'd simply advise him to smile and brush off the rumors. Our love stood steadfast, unaffected by external opinions. My husband had complete trust in me, choosing to believe in our bond regardless of the skepticism around us. Several years into our marriage, we welcomed our eldest son, Peter, followed by the arrival of our second son, Dan, the following year. As a family of 4, we enjoyed financial comfort, yet my husband and I decided not to disclose our wealth to Peter and Dan. Instead, we taught them the value of money from a young age. In elementary school, they earned 10 cents for assisting with household chores, received a monthly allowance of $1, and managed their finances through piggy banks and account books. Despite our financial stability, we instilled in them the unpredictability of the world and the importance of financial responsibility. Both Peter and Dan, influenced by our approach, learned to respect each other's interests. By the time they reached high school, instead of asking for pocket money, they expressed a desire to work for what they wanted. Peter took a job at a cafe, while Dan found employment at a bookstore. My husband and I eagerly anticipated their futures, sharing in the excitement of discovering the kind of people they would eventually choose as life partners. When I mentioned the possibility of them choosing same-gender partners or opting for a single life, my husband laughed, agreeing that their happiness was paramount. We shared a heartfelt laugh, acknowledging our simple wish for our son's happiness, not anticipating the surprise that awaited us when our eldest son expressed his intention to marry someone that left us exclaiming, "You're marrying her? I want to introduce you to the woman I've been dating, Dad, Mom and Dan. I'm considering marrying her in the future." Even after Peter and Dan graduated from university, started working, and moved out of the family home, we made it a point to have a family dinner once a month. During one of these dinners, Peter announced his decision, and both Rita, my husband, and Dan were already in a celebratory mood, expressing excitement about meeting her. That evening, Peter brought the woman in question to our house. Upon entering, she marveled at our home, expressing aspirations of living in such a fantastic house someday. She exclaimed how wonderful it was, and Peter watched her with a fond smile. When we greeted them, she introduced herself as Vivian, mentioning that she works as a model, although she uses a stage name. Curious, she asked if we knew her, and I admitted that I occasionally glance at magazines but don't pay much attention to the models. She nodded in understanding, suggesting that I might be too old to be familiar with the magazines she appears in. I was taken aback when she added that I might not read the kind of magazines she features in, given my age. Despite the initial shock, I realized she probably didn't mean any harm and was merely making a casual observation. She then asked if my marriage was arranged, to which I replied no, explaining that Peter and I had a love marriage. Vivian, in turn, shared that she and Peter also had a love marriage. Surprisingly, she questioned the longevity of our relationship, considering the 10-year age gap. Sensing a comparison between the lengths of our romances, I pointed out the futility of such comparisons and emphasized that we had a love marriage, just like she and Peter. However, she seemed skeptical and brought up the topic of money, insinuating that we might be pretending for financial reasons. Peter intervened, asserting that our parents had a genuine love marriage, evident in the way they are together. This seemed to halt Vivian's line of questioning. When Peter took Vivian home, my husband and Dan were shocked by her remarks, leaving them too stunned to say anything. In the aftermath, my brother's choice of a potential life partner left them appalled and questioning if he would really marry someone with such an attitude. He's a high earner. There must be plenty of other nice women out there. Dan, visibly concerned about his brother, was holding his head. I patted his shoulder, offering reassurance. It's okay, Dan. Peter wasn't endorsing her behavior, was he? He wasn't overlooking her remarks. He must have plans to handle her if they get married. He must genuinely love her to choose her over all the other nice women out there. Despite the complexity of their expressions, my husband and Dan seemed to agree with my words. Our family decided to celebrate the marriage of Peter and Vivian. However, even after the marriage was decided, Vivian made a demand. Since you're the groom's family, you should give a gift of $10,000 per person. Peter silenced her, stating that the standard amount was sufficient. He explained, if we receive that much, it'll look like I'm not earning anything, which calmed down and agitated Vivian simultaneously. As long as Peter kept a firm hand on her, we hoped they could build a good home. My husband Dan and I decided not to worry about their household. Time passed and my husband eventually passed away due to illness and aging. By that time, those who had once thought I married him for his wealth had come to see me as a devoted wife. At the funeral, no one looked at me suspiciously. However, one person's eyes were shining with excitement. Vivian, Peter's wife. She didn't say anything at the funeral, but soon after, she came to our house flaunting a bank book. I've always been stopped by Peter, but this time he agreed with my plan, so it's the end for you now. Confused by her words, I burst into laughter upon seeing the bank book. With that bank book, I bought a house for $500,000 with the old man's money. Watching Vivian proudly show off the bank book, I couldn't help but burst into laughter, realizing the huge mistake she had made based on her words and the bank book in her hand. Despite my efforts to keep calm and not be surprised since my husband's death, I couldn't contain my laughter. When Vivian asked why I was lacking so much, expecting defeat, I just laughed in front of her. After finally stopping my laughter, I looked at her and said, "Sorry for you, huh?" She didn't seem to understand, so I pointed at the bank book in her hand. Look at the name carefully. Confused, she realized it was Peter's bank book. Bursting into laughter again, I couldn't help but find humor in the mix-up. I clarified, the first character of Peter's name and my husband Paul's name are the same, right? As I laughed, Vivian, embarrassed, pleaded not to be laughed at. She had mistakenly thought it was her father-in-law's bank book and even borrowed his ID from a black bag at the funeral. However, it turned out the bag belonged to her own husband, Peter. Despite the mix-up, I managed to buy a house for $500,000 with it. When Vivian questioned if I had $500,000 to borrow a house, I responded, well, Peter was with me, so I had him do it. I found the situation increasingly hilarious. Vivian discovered a bank book in her husband Peter's bag, and it seemed she suggested buying a house with the account holder, Peter. Judging by the amount in the bank book, she proposed buying a $500,000 house. Since Peter and Vivian were living in an apartment, Peter might have thought it was time to invest in a house. For Peter, it was merely buying a house with his earned money, but Vivian mistakenly thought it was my husband's bank book and believed she could use it. Not being the account holder, I thought it might be the bank book with my husband's insurance money. The beneficiary of my husband's insurance was me, and normally you can't use the account of someone who has passed away, right? Vivian's face turned red at my words. Then Peter and Vivian's parents appeared at our house. "Ah, I thought you'd be here," Peter said nonchalantly as Vivian's parents, looking pale, came to me, bowing repeatedly. They apologized for their daughter's rudeness. As I was surprised, Vivian's parents explained what had happened. After Peter and Vivian decided to buy a house and completed the contract, an excited Vivian texted her mother, saying, "Got a mansion with the dead father-in-law's insurance money. I'll invite you over once we move in." Now I'm going to brag to the money-hungry mother-in-law about buying a house with the money she was supposed to get. In a panic, her mother showed the message to her father, and they both contacted Peter in a hurry. Peter calmed them down, saying, "Ah, I see," and brought them to our house. I always kept an eye on Vivian, expecting her to mess up sometimes. But I never thought she'd mix up my bank book with Dad's. I didn't think she'd make such a blunder. Peter laughed as much as I did when he realized Vivian's mistake. Vivian's parents told her to apologize, their faces still pale. But Peter and I continued to laugh, creating a chaotic scene. Once we stopped laughing, Vivian's parents apologized and said, "We're truly sorry for what our daughter did." Seeing her parents flustered, Vivian also apologized to us. "Oh, it's all right. In the end, I haven't suffered any harm," I told Vivian and her parents, but they insisted on apologizing. "We know you two had a love marriage and were together before your husband built his fortune. We saw your husband on a TV program talking about how you two met. My wife and I were so moved by your love story," Vivian's parents explained. I exclaimed in surprise as I didn't know anything about it. Peter, sitting next to me, said, "Ah, I thought Mom didn't know." Dad couldn't stand seeing Mom misunderstood, so he talked about it everywhere, and it reached the ears of a TV station. They thought it was a great story and broadcasted how Mom and Dad met. Was that what he was asking about a few years ago when he wanted to tell people our story? "Ah, I guess you did give the okay. I thought it was just for casual conversation." As my face turned as red as Vivian's, who was still embarrassed by her blunder, I realized the legacy my husband had left behind. Our daughter had caused such a disgrace. "If Peter wants to divorce her after this," Peter, looking puzzled, replied, "What? I have no intention of divorcing her even after what she did. Like Mom said, there was no harm done, and I would have stopped her if it looked like there would be. I married her, including her occasional blunders, because I love her. I'll take responsibility for her actions, so please don't worry." Peter said this with a refreshing smile. Vivian hugged him, and her parents were in awe, praising Peter for his kindness. When Dan, the younger son, heard about it later, he said, "I just can't understand my brother's thinking," looking skyward. When I asked Peter why he loved her so much, he said, laughing, "She's never boring to watch." Remembering how he made me laugh during my grief after my husband's death, I felt I understood what he meant. Being with her probably meant no time for minor worries or sulking. Though Vivian did what she did, she's been without an allowance for a while and recently started working at my favorite cafe. Whether she was embarrassed by how much I laughed at her, scolded by her parents, or heard in detail about mine and my husband's love story from them, I'm not sure. But lately she's been calling me ma'am and treating me more respectfully. For a while, I think I'll continue visiting this cafe, watching Peter's wife grow and change. I find solace in the understanding I share with my daughter-in-law. Following my husband's funeral, my mother-in-law, blissfully ignorant, bid me farewell with a radiant smile as she drove me away. However, the next day, panic painted her face when she visited my parents' house where I sought refuge. It was clear her scheme to secure my husband's inheritance had hit a snag. In that moment, the true gravity of ignorance struck me. My name is Emily. I'm 39, married to John, who is 2 years my junior. We have a daughter, Rose, in first grade. Living with my mother-in-law began a year ago after my father-in-law's passing. Concerned about her solitude in their spacious home, I agreed to the cohabitation. Initially, we split living expenses, offering some relief. Yet, unexpected challenges emerged as my mother-in-law started criticizing me for sharing household chores with my husband. She disapproved, asserting that it was unfit for the head of the family to engage in such tasks. Despite my role as the primary breadwinner due to a 2-year age gap with my husband, my mother-in-law remained oblivious to this fact. Frustrated, I pleaded with my husband to enlighten her about our financial dynamics, hoping to resume our shared responsibilities. However, he hesitated, revealing his reluctance to take on additional chores. Disappointed, I realized a new facet of my husband's character. Eventually, labeled a failure as a wife, I found myself shouldering all household duties alone, while my mother-in-law, a full-time housewife, remained oblivious to the imbalance. It's almost comical that she isn't fulfilling her role as a housewife, considering she should be sharing the household chores. With my husband now liberated from domestic duties, he started venturing out alone on his days off, donning casual attire despite claiming to be at work. Skepticism gnawed at me, questioning the authenticity of his purported work engagements. Moreover, on weekends, he began frequently checking his smartphone, leaving me curious about what captivated his attention. Despite my interest, he guarded his phone closely, leaving no opportunity for me to investigate. His supposed overtime hours were also inconsistent. He often returned home around the usual time or just an hour later. While suspicions of infidelity lingered, observing his routine on weekdays made me question the validity of such thoughts. A few months later, anomalies in my husband's behavior became more apparent. He had been consistent in contributing his share of living expenses, but now, instead of the customary $670, he was depositing only $600 or sometimes even $540. Perplexed, I confronted him about the financial shortfall, emphasizing my strict principles regarding money matters. With many years of marriage behind us, I expected a straightforward explanation. He nonchalantly attributed it to the company's poor performance, claiming a temporary reduction in his salary, making it challenging to meet the usual contribution. Doubtful, I pressed further, questioning whether financial cutbacks were a guise for unfaithfulness. Surprised, he vehemently denied any such betrayal, citing the presence of our family as a deterrent. While his response seemed sincere, the mystery of his weekend escapades lingered. Frustrated by the lack of clarity, I contemplated hiring a detective agency to unveil the truth. However, before I could take that step, a significant event unfolded a few days later during his work. A call from an unfamiliar number shattered the tranquility of my day. It turned out to be my husband's boss. The voice on the other end, the embodiment of concern, disclosed a distressing truth. John, my husband, had been in a traffic accident during a business errand and his life hung in the balance. The gravity of those words plunged my mind into chaos. The notion of danger to his life left me momentarily paralyzed, but soon reality snapped back. I promptly informed my boss, set aside any ongoing tasks, and rushed to the hospital, fervently wishing for his survival. Upon reaching the hospital, the devastating news awaited me. My husband had succumbed to the impact of a car collision while waiting for a green light at an intersection. Attempting to evade another vehicle that ran a red light, he stood no chance against the force of the collision. His instant demise left me grappling with an overwhelming torrent of responsibilities. Last year, I had experienced the rituals of wake and funeral preparations with the passing of my father-in-law. But then, I had my husband by my side. Now, I faced the daunting task alone. My grief-stricken mother-in-law, lost in a daze, proved incapable of offering assistance. She occasionally wandered away, seemingly seeking solace in places steeped in memories of my husband. The shock of losing both husband and son in rapid succession left her incapacitated. In the face of this tragedy, I resolved to be strong. I had to not only navigate the funeral arrangements but also prepare my daughter Rose for a future without her father. Breaking the news to Rose was an agonizing task. I explained that her father had been involved in a fatal car accident, leaving only the two of us to face the world together. Despite the uncertainty of her understanding, I felt compelled to share this harsh reality with her. As we progressed through the wake, the day of the funeral arrived, ushering in a new wave of emotions. The tension mounted, and I found myself unable to contain the flood of tears. My mother-in-law, seemingly concerned about my emotional state, approached me and uttered something utterly unbelievable. In the midst of my mourning, she callously suggested that since there was no blood relation, I should refrain from claiming John's inheritance and simply depart, leaving Rose behind. She even went so far as to question Rose's worth as my daughter, proposing that I take her when I leave. Her laughter accompanying these heartless words added an extra layer of shock. Struggling to comprehend such cruelty amid my grief, I decided to maintain composure until the funeral concluded and distance myself from my mother-in-law's callous remarks. Her smirking face lingered in my memory, fueling a desire for some form of retribution. Post-funeral, I meticulously prepared to depart, packing only the essentials for Rose and me. I approached my mother-in-law and declared my renouncement of any claim to John's inheritance, offering it to her without hesitation. Her face lit up with joy at the prospect, expressing relief and gratitude for my supposed understanding. She eagerly agreed, seemingly content with the arrangement, and happily retreated to her room, signaling the end of our association. As we left the house, I couldn't fathom the newfound happiness she exuded. Despite our initial decision to live together due to her loneliness, she now appeared content with our departure. The reasons for her joy remained elusive to me. Upon reaching my parents' house, I recounted the entire ordeal to my father, who was understandably outraged. He condemned my mother-in-law's actions, deeming her concern for inheritance immediately after John's death despicable. Concerned about our financial stability without the inheritance, my father pondered our future. However, I assured him that we would manage without it, having handled expenses on my salary alone for the past month or two. Expressing his concern for Rose's future and the importance of saving, my father generously offered us a place to live. Grateful, I accepted his kindness. Regarding my husband's inheritance, I revealed a document to my father that had recently arrived from my in-laws' house. A report titled John's Conduct Investigation. It contained shocking revelations about my husband's true nature. As I spent time at my parents' house on John's bereavement leave, contemplating our next steps, the doorbell incessantly rang. Irritated by the persistent ringing, I opened the door to find my mother-in-law looking pale and agitated. Confused by her sudden change in demeanor, I responded through the intercom, urging her to stop shouting. Her outburst about my knowledge of John's substantial debt disturbed the neighbors. Reluctantly, she acquiesced to a quieter conversation, but her unexpected visit begged the question. What did she want after proclaiming just the day before that we should no longer be in contact? I responded with cold detachment, stating that it concerned John's inheritance and suggested continuing the conversation inside. However, my mother intervened, adamantly refusing entry to someone who had callously told my grieving daughter to leave during a funeral. Concerned about shielding Rose from the discussion, I concurred with my mother's decision. Unyielding, my mother-in-law insisted on finding an alternative, leading us to agree to talk at a nearby cafe. Once at the restaurant, my mother-in-law wasted no time delving into the discussion. She accused me of leaving the house easily because I knew John was drowning in debt. I confirmed her suspicion, citing John's weekend work claims, perpetual smartphone proximity, and his sudden halt in contributing to living expenses as red flags. To clarify, I hired a detective agency that revealed his gambling addiction and mounting debts, information I learned just 2 days prior. Addressing her concern about my tears at the funeral, I admitted genuine sorrow for the loss but acknowledged that, considering everything, leaving was the right decision. Intrigued, she questioned the total amount of John's debt. Startled, I revealed a demand letter I received that day, a staggering $6,700, contributing to a grand total of $33,700 in debt. I warned her that unless she renounced the inheritance, she'd be burdened with the entire sum. Dismayed by the revelation, my mother-in-law stuttered, confessing that the inheritance from her husband was already spent, $13,500 on luxury items, anticipating John's inheritance. This expenditure explained her post-funeral shopping sprees. Realizing her financial recklessness, I acknowledged my inability to assist with her debt and urged her to handle the renunciation herself. I left, and in subsequent events, she managed to renounce John's negative inheritance, but the $13,500 debt remained. Attempts to seek help from relatives failed due to the rumors of her actions on the day of the funeral. In contrast, life for Rose and me took a positive turn. Despite Rose transferring schools, she embraced her new environment energetically. Living with my parents allowed me to focus on work, providing a stable income. We now spend quality weekends together, exploring shopping malls, visiting theme parks, and enjoying activities we couldn't during John's lifetime. Supported by my loving parents, our days are filled with smiles, and I am determined to sustain this newfound happiness.
Hello, I'm Bianca, 30 years old. It's been a while since this incident occurred, but I feel the need to discuss it while the details are still fresh. Let me begin from the start. The first person I want to introduce you to is my husband, Matt. Matt and I first met back in high school. I was a shy kid with too much anxiety to make friends. However, for reasons only known to God, Matt took a liking to me. We were paired as lab partners in chemistry, and that's how we started talking. It took me a while to open up, but when I did, Matt asked me out on a date. Keep in mind that Matt was one of the most attractive guys at our school, athletic and smart. Despite being an anxious mess, I wasn't oblivious. I said yes, and our one date turned into many more. The longer I spent time with him, the more comfortable and open I became. I loved that I could finally express myself around someone. Matt was caring and understanding, never pushing me to do anything that would make me uncomfortable. I felt like I had hit the jackpot with him. Now, let me introduce you to my mother-in-law, Olivia. Olivia had faced challenges in life. Her husband, Matt's dad, had passed away when the boys were young. She raised them on her own, and I was always in awe of how she managed it. However, the issue was her unbearably overprotective nature, especially towards Matt. The first time I met Olivia, she scowled at me, and her overprotectiveness only intensified over time. She seemed to have a vendetta against me, never missing an opportunity to talk trash. Initially, I didn't pay it much mind, but as it continued, I spoke to Matt about it. One evening at dinner, when Olivia made a rude comment about my appearance as Matt left the room, he walked back in and confronted his mom. He told her she couldn't make such comments and defended me. Olivia tried to downplay it as a joke, but Matt stood his ground, demanding an apology. Even though I knew Olivia's apology wasn't sincere, it felt amazing that Matt stood up for me. I was grateful that Matt had my back, no matter what. Olivia continued to behave the same way even years after Matt and I were together, but it became easier to bear knowing that Matt had my back. The next person I'll introduce you to is Trent, Matt's younger brother. Trent was the only other person who made an effort to talk to me. He took an interest in getting to know me, and being Matt's family, being comfortable around him was a lot easier. We shared a lot of the same interests, and in general, got along really well. Matt was actually happy that I got along with at least one of his family members. For the longest time, I thought I had made a special friend with Trent, but as I tell you the events of the story, you'll realize just how wrong I was. The last person I want to introduce you to is Rachel, Trent's wife, and my sister-in-law. Rachel was the kind of person to bend over backwards to please someone else, regardless of whether the person was right or wrong. When she met Olivia for the first time, they got to talking, and Rachel pretty much agreed with every view that Olivia had about me. Soon, Rachel became Olivia's partner in everything against me. That really hurt me. I mean, Rachel didn't even know me, and she made an effort to get to know me, but she hated me because Olivia did. Over time, I learned to let go of it. Coming back to my relationship with Matt, we decided to get married once we were both financially stable. That took about 3 years after graduating from college. Once we had well-paying jobs and were able to purchase a house, we decided to tie the knot. Of course, Olivia was not happy with that. She tried to sabotage our relationship in many ways while we were engaged. For example, she tried to convince Matt that he was settling for me without ever having gone out with anyone else. She even tried to set him up on dates with other women, which he vehemently disagreed with. That one really hurt. I knew she didn't like me, but to actively try to make her son a cheater, something was deeply wrong with her. At our wedding, Olivia pulled another stunt to disrupt the good mood we were all in. When it was her turn to make a toast, she began to talk about how her son was marrying a woman she disapproved of and genuinely hoped that he would come to his senses soon and leave me. I cried, obviously, but Matt was furious. He had her kicked out, and for the rest of the night, he never left my side. That incident was what made Matt and me lose contact with Olivia. We didn't speak to her, except for the holidays, for the entirety of the next 2 years. We only saw her at Trent's wedding, and we tried our best to avoid her because, quite frankly, we were happy for Trent. We were trying to celebrate his big day, but somehow Olivia managed to corner us and she asked to talk. Matt didn't want to give her a chance, but I asked him to let her speak. After all, we could hear her out, but we didn't have to accept what she said. Look, I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry for everything I said that day at your wedding. If you were really sorry, you would have come over to our place and apologized. You had 2 years to do it, but you never did. I felt embarrassed. There was no way for me to behave on my son's big day, and I should have realized that if my son was happy, I should have been happy too. I guess I just didn't have the courage to face you. But we did call you on the holidays and your birthday. Even if you couldn't apologize face to face, you could have done it over the phone. It was just very hard for me. Okay, I'm still owning up to my mistake. I'm sorry, I'm still angry with you, and if Bianca doesn't forgive you, we'll go back to the way we've been operating these past 2 years. I liked that Matt allowed me to have a say in it. Unfortunately, I was very big on keeping family close. So of course I told her I forgave her. I didn't want Matt to be estranged from his only parents. Olivia seemed very grateful, and for a while after that, she treated me well. Then, about a year later, she went back to her old ways. This time, Rachel joined her too. They would constantly mock me, be it in things I said or did. It didn't matter because they always found a way to make fun of me. I tried my best to let go of things and kept Matt calm too. I knew that if either of us said or did anything, it would only end with us cutting all ties with Olivia, and I didn't want that for us. But one weekend, Matt and I were rudely interrupted by Olivia, Rachel, and Trent. It was supposed to be a weekend where Matt and I would sleep in and catch up on a bunch of shows that we had started watching. But that plan went out of the window when we heard banging on the front door. I lazily made my way to the door, and as soon as I opened it, Olivia and Rachel pushed past me and walked in. Trent followed them too, each of them holding a box that looked a little heavy. As Matt walked over to the living room, I could see that he was just as confused as I was. What's going on? What are you guys holding? This right here is proof. Proof of what? Of you having an affair. Excuse me, what makes you think that I've been having an affair? I always knew there was something wrong with you, and I was not alone. I felt the same way too. I mean, at every family gathering, you suddenly had work once or twice. It's fine, but every single time, that's suspicious. It's not suspicious. I'm literally a nurse. You guys just happen to be there whenever I get called, and I get called in other times too. Wow, you're bold, lying right to our faces when we have proof. Matt, I swear I haven't ever cheated on you. I don't know what proof they have in there, but I promise you it's not me. Calm down, Matt, it's okay. I doubt you'd ever cheat on me. I'm just curious to see what Mom and Rachel found. Believe me, your views about your wife are about to change once you see them. How did you even get this evidence? Rachel and I hired a private investigator who followed Bianca around for the last 6 months. We just got the evidence from the PI's office and we came here straight away. That's beyond creepy and violating. What the hell is wrong with you guys? You have no say in anything, you cheating piece of crap. Enough, let Bianca and me see the evidence. I was furious at this point. What had I ever done to these two? I had always made sure that I had been out of their way, and yet they tried to come between Matt and me. To hire a private investigator to follow me around for 6 months, that made my skin crawl. Who does something that deranged to get rid of someone they don't like? I was more than curious to see what these results were. Matt looked at me, and for a moment, we had a silent understanding that everything was going to be okay. Matt knew I could never cheat on him. The reason? I have really bad social anxiety. It's almost crippling. It takes a long while for me to get comfortable with someone. He knew firsthand how he had struggled to get me to even talk to him. The last thing I could possibly do is talk to some stranger and sleep with them. Granted, working as an oncology nurse had been helping me get over my anxiety. I would come home after work and just shut down for the next few hours, and Matt had seen and dealt with all that from the start of our relationship. I had never met someone who was so understanding and patient. I had always thought that I would end up being single for the rest of my life. So, when the universe dropped the perfect guy for me in my lap, why the hell would I do something so horrible to him? We opened one of the boxes and saw quite a large number of pictures, and there were some of the investigator's notes paired along with them. But in all of those pictures, there weren't any clear faces. This woman did look shockingly like me, and for a second, my heart did drop. I turned to look at Matt, and his face had drained of color. I began panicking, so I searched the pictures for any signs that might prove that it wasn't me. I could hear Olivia and Rachel sniggering behind me. I was so close to giving up and crying until I came across this one picture where this girl had a tattoo on her right arm. I had no tattoos. I showed the picture to Matt, and his fear turned to confusion. It was like we were speaking in a silent language. I immediately knew that we had to figure out whose pictures we were looking at. We opened the other 2 boxes and began to scour through those pictures and notes. And that's when, in one of the notes, the investigator mentions me getting into a car with a particular license plate that looked very, very familiar. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, so I showed it to Matt. He took one look at it and burst out laughing. All of us stared at him in confusion. Matt then leaned down to my ear and whispered whose car it was. I was so shocked that I couldn't help but burst out laughing too. Olivia, Rachel, and Trent looked very confused. Now they waited for either Matt or me to explain what we were laughing about, but that never happened because Matt and I kept going through the pictures and just laughing even more. This made Olivia and Rachel really irritated, so they spoke up. What's going on? Why are you guys laughing at the proof of Bianca cheating? Yeah, are you one of those couples that don't mind a third person? Oh God, no, absolutely not. We just found out something really funny. What could possibly be funny about cheating? Oh, that's not me in the pictures. Yes, it is. We looked through a couple of the pictures and it's definitely you. Look at this one picture. See the tattoo on the girl's hand? Yeah, Bianca doesn't have any tattoos. What if it was a temporary one she put on so she could avoid getting recognized? I honestly hate having tattoos on me. I've never even put a temporary tattoo on me. Okay, well, we made a mistake. What's so funny about that? What's funny is the identity of the man in these pictures. The man, you can barely make out who that is. How do you know who he is? Because of the investigator's notes. Here, take a look at that car plate. Do the numbers look familiar? Rachel grabbed the paper out of my hand. Olivia and Trent gathered around her to read the paper. As soon as they read it, I could see the range of emotions that they experienced. Olivia's eyes grew wide and her mouth fell open in shock. Rachel's face went white while Trent began sweating profusely. You see, the number plate was that of Trent's car, and the more you look through the pictures, the more you begin to clearly see that the man was Trent. Matt silently passed the pictures over where Trent's face was almost clearly visible, save for either a mask or a pair of sunglasses that he used to cover his face. Now, I didn't know why Trent was cheating on Rachel, but I must admit that it was really sweet to see Rachel's world come crumbling down the same way she wanted mine to fall. I was curious to find out why Trent was cheating, but I decided to just let Olivia and Rachel start the drama. I retreated and stood next to Matt. We were both trying our hardest not to break into laughter. Trent, what is this? Are you cheating on me? Listen, I can explain. Are you serious? This is not how I raised you. I'm sorry, but I never loved Rachel to begin with. What? Are you serious? Unfortunately, yeah. Why? What did I do that was so wrong? You didn't do anything wrong, Rachel. I was just in love with someone else from the start. Who was it? Bianca. Excuse me? What the hell is wrong with you? Man, really? You were in love with Bianca? You chose this ugly witch over me. Since when? I've been in love with her since Matt introduced her to us. She was just so beautiful and she was calm and quiet. I don't know, I liked that. Plus, when she did get comfortable enough with me, I found out that we shared a lot of the same interests. Oh God, I'm going to be sick. So, you found someone who looked just like Bianca. I knew you guys were already trying to ruin their marriage. I sort of hoped I could speed it up, and if they did get divorced, I could swoop in and have her. First of all, she is not some property that you can have. Secondly, get the hell out of my house. You are sick and twisted and beyond any help. I hope you rot. Never come back, never speak to me or Bianca again. As for you guys, Mom and Rachel, I want you out too. But we didn't even do anything. You did enough. I entertained your little game, but now I am done. It's beyond disgusting that you hired someone to follow my wife around so you could try and break up my marriage. I want nothing to do with any of you. Out. I can't even begin to describe how queasy I felt. That was the last thing I expected. I just remember Matt holding me until I started breathing regularly. I was disgusted by the way Trent saw me. I had only gotten comfortable with him because he was the only one in Matt's family who actually tried to get to know me. But to find out that he had made that effort because he wanted me was beyond disgusting. Matt was not feeling any better. He was fuming. He couldn't believe that his own brother was capable of being such a creep. He promised me that he would stand by any decision I made regarding everything that happened. I obviously wanted zero contact with all of them, especially Trent. I never wanted to see his face ever again. Of course, Trent did try to reach out to me about a month after everything had happened. He actually tried to convince me to leave his brother. I later found out that he had sent those messages to me after he had gotten divorced and lost everything he had to Rachel. I had blocked him right away then, but when I think back on it now, it's amazing that he possessed that amount of audacity. Anyway, I had to go back to therapy for a while after that incident. I needed a place to vent about my feelings, and since it concerned his brother, Matt would get too wound up about it. He too went to therapy to sort his feelings out. It's been about a year since all of that happened. Matt and I have moved on and are living full and happy lives. We haven't seen or heard from Olivia or Rachel since then. I hope, if not anything else, that they learn to never meddle in anyone else's life. Back then, I was a mess after finding out what Trent thought about me, but now I'm at a place where I can laugh at it. I'm glad I came out of it strong and even more glad that Matt and I's relationship also grew stronger. Always make sure to be kind to all those in your life. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, I'm Yasmin and I want to share a story that sheds light on my incredibly entitled and eccentric mother-in-law, Jessica. My husband Kai suggested sharing this tale because he enjoys reading them from time to time. Before you find it odd, let me clarify that he's well aware of his mother's eccentricities, having been her first victim. Kai's upbringing involved Jessica, who divorced his father shortly after his birth. He experienced her craziness firsthand and distanced himself as much as possible. Unfortunately, Jessica's poor taste in men persisted, leading to another abandonment by Kai's father. While Kai's father paid child support initially, he later terminated his rights. I've never met the man and have no desire to. Claiming to have single-handedly raised Kai, Jessica exploited him to extract money from her family for an extended period. When they grew weary of supporting her, she found a job but continued to siphon money from Kai. During his teenage years, Jessica coerced him into working, all the while pocketing his earnings until he turned 18. Recognizing the need to break free, Kai took out student loans and secured a scholarship for college. That's where we crossed paths. Kai shared the harrowing stories of his mother's behavior, and I couldn't help but be furious on his behalf. I questioned how he could still be in contact with her. He explained, "I was raised by a narcissist. She conditioned me to believe that taking care of her is my responsibility." Distressed by Kai's situation, I used my savings to kickstart his therapy. Although initially resistant, Kai eventually embraced the process, gaining confidence and slowly standing up to his manipulative mother. Recognizing the positive changes, I continued supporting him. Unsurprisingly, Jessica never liked me. During our first meeting, she accused me of being a gold digger who poisoned her son against her. I defended myself, highlighting that I used my money to help Kai access therapy. Over the years, Kai and I graduated, got married, and secured good jobs. Despite working hard for our success, Jessica persisted in her financial demands. She eventually got married to a disrespectful man named Frank, and Kai reluctantly agreed to rent her an apartment. When we bought a house, she expressed her satisfaction, stating, "Heave, I'm so happy that you finally bought a house. I was getting tired of living in an apartment. So when can Frank and I move in?" "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" "Well, I'll be moving into your house with Frank. That's what I'm saying. Why should I live in an apartment when you are housing your wife for free?" "Jessica, we both bought this jointly. I literally co-own this place with Kai. I don't live here for free. You are the one who lives in the apartment for free since Kai pays the rent." "Watch your mouth, Jasmine. I don't tolerate disrespect from anyone. I'm talking to my son about his house. I didn't ask you anything. I have the right to talk since it's also my house you are talking about. You're not staying with us, and neither is Frank. That's for my son to decide, and he knows that it's his responsibility to take care of me. I'm already taking care of you, Mom. You don't get to move into my house to raise me. That's not how it works, and there is no chance of an argument, so don't even try. You're acting like an entitled brat, Keith. Your mom worked hard to raise you, and you need to take some responsibility for her. Now, be a good son and give us a copy of your keys so that we can move in. You don't get to say what I do with my house keys, Frank. Neither of you is even getting a copy of our keys. I'll say this for the last time, you two will not be moving into our house. That's it." You would think that's the end of it. Well, it isn't. For days, Frank and Jessica kept harassing us and guilting us. Jessica even said some horrible things to me because she thought I was manipulating Keith and making him abandon her. It was funny at first, but soon we got fed up. One day, Kay went to their apartment to drive it into their heads that they wouldn't be moving in. We thought our point got across since we stopped hearing from them. Problem solved. Well, not quite. A month after we moved into our house, we had a small vacation coming up. After saving for years, we finally decided to go on a break to celebrate our house purchase. It was supposed to be a relaxing vacation for the two of us by the beach. We both took time off and decided to take things easy for that week. We flew there and had a blast from the first day itself. But as evening came, something shocking happened. I got a notification from the Ring camera on my house's door. Yes, we did set up surveillance cameras before we went on vacation since we didn't ask anyone to house sit. We thought that it would be important. Now, I had no idea who would even show up at the door. The neighborhood is pretty safe, and we have lived there before. Hardly anything ever happened there, so I was curious why there was so much activity at the house. I opened my phone to see what the hell was going on there. What I found in the live camera footage shocked me. There I saw my dear mother-in-law Jessica and her new husband Frank moving into our freaking home. Yes, they somehow got into our house and brought 12 bags of clothes. Literally 12 freaking bags. They were moving into the guest room and setting up everything there. Jessica even went into the kitchen to make herself some food. I was shocked and angry at what I was witnessing. I knew that I needed to tell Keith immediately. So, I called him over and said, "Keith, I have some news. I think we need to talk about it right now. Right now." "What's so important, Yasmin? We're on vacation. I'm kind of not in the mood for any serious stuff today." "Trust me, Keith, I'm not in the mood to deal with horrible people either. But this situation is dire and needs our immediate attention. I'm afraid it's about your mother. Mom's making trouble again." "Oh God, what is it this time? Did she manage to break into our house or something?" From the look I gave Keith, it became apparent to him that he wasn't off the mark. His eyes immediately turned into saucers as he tried to make sense of the situation. I pulled out my phone and showed him what Jessica and Frank were doing. He was shocked and looked very angry at what he was seeing. I mean, his joke turned out to be the truth. His mom broke into our new house and was moving in furniture with her husband. Keith looked a little pissed off and said, "You can leave it to my mother to surprise me in the worst way possible. Looks like she didn't take the hint at all. We made it clear that day that she won't be living with us. I'm even surprised as to how she got the keys to our house. It just blows my mind. Her new husband is a sleazy guy, Yasmin. We both know that. I'm afraid he may have gotten his hands on our keys and made a copy. I wouldn't put it past him. We will need to go back and change the locks. That's the only way we can make sure that they don't budge into our house anytime they like. But what do we do about this current problem? Do you have something in mind?" "Look, I know they are your parents and all, but I really want to call the cops on them. What they are doing is illegal and downright scary. They can't be trusted anymore. Either calling the cops and getting no contact with them is the best solution possible." I gave Keith some time to turn the idea in his head. I could see that he was thinking hard and had grim lines on his forehead, but it didn't take too long for him to come back with a response, and his response was way better than I imagined. He said, "You know what, Yasmin? Let's do it." "What? Are you sure about that? There'll be no going back once we do this, and the cops will drag your mom and Frank to the streets with all their things." "I know that, Yasmin. I've given them enough chances to improve themselves. They just betrayed my trust every time. I have to stop somewhere. There has to be some consequences. What they did today is not only a breach of our privacy but also illegal. I think it's time they realize they can't do whatever they want. Would you go no contact with them as well?" Of course, my reluctance to do that has already created a lot of problems. I should have done this a long time ago. I'm freaking stupid and thought Mom would grow some sense after I got married. Since that's not happening, I'm going to distance myself from them. It's the only way and I am actually feeling good about it. "Okay then, if you're on board with it, let's proceed with that plan. But first, let's call your mom and give her a warning. Just a final chance to make this right. I don't have any hope, but we can get evidence that we didn't allow her in our house." Keith agreed with the plan and called his mother. She didn't pick up the first time through the security cameras. I could see that she was visibly annoyed and went to Frank. They discussed something before answering the call. When we rang the second time, she put the phone on loudspeaker so that Frank could join in as well. She said, "Hey Keith, how are you doing? Is the vacation going fine? You need to tell me what's going on over there." "I don't know what you're talking about. Everything is just breezy here. Nothing to worry about really. Jessica, you and Frank breaking into our house is nothing to worry about." Jessica went quiet when I said that. On the security tapes, we could see that she tensed and looked at Frank again. I mean, Frank was better at fooling and manipulating people, so this was expected. Jessica wanted her new husband to come up with some plan. "What are you even talking about, Yasmin? Kay, your wife has gone crazy. You need to shut her up." "Don't talk to my wife like that. We know what you two are up to. With cameras in the house, both inside and out, there's no point in lying to us. We can see you on our phones right now." "Wait, what? How dare you spy on us, Keith? This is unacceptable. What about our privacy? You should have been more thoughtful." It was ironic how Jessica was offended by the fact that we could see their activities on our screen. She talks about respecting people's privacy when she broke into someone's house and made it her own. I didn't know if Jessica was trying to deflect or if she was genuinely offended. I have a good guess that it's a little bit of both. Her words sparked something in me, and I said, "That's rich coming from you, Jessica. You are the one who broke into our private home when we clearly told you that you are not allowed in." "I don't care what you say, Yasmin. It's my son's house too, so I have the right to be here. I'm his mother and should be staying with him." I already said no to that, Mom. Just because you're my mother doesn't mean you will go wherever I go. You already have an apartment that I pay for. Who wants to live in that tiny apartment when you have brought such a big house? You're turning into such a selfish man after getting married, Keith. This is unacceptable. You can't expect your own mother to live in an apartment while you enjoy a whole house with your wife. That decision is not up to you, Mom. You shouldn't have just packed up your stuff and moved into the house. How did you even get the keys? Both me and Kay were troubled by this question and needed answers immediately. Also, we needed them to confess to their wrongs so that we could use that to report them to the police. And our hunch was right. Frank said, "Well, since you decided to be a brat and ignore your mother, I went and made a copy of your keys." "Who the hell told you to touch my keys? I didn't give you permission to do that." "I don't need your permission, Kai. I'm your stepdad. I have the authority to do what I think is right. You don't get to question me." "I don't care who you are to me, Frank. I'm a grown-ass man and don't need a parent. What you did was forgery, and both are offenses under the law." "Kai, how dare you talk to Frank like that? He only did this because he knew I was sad. A mother should have the keys to her son's house for emergencies and all, you know? For emergencies and breaking in whenever you want? You're insane, Jessica. You need to get off our property with all your stuff within an hour. If you don't, we will call the cops." That made Jessica and Frank look frightened. They visibly panicked and whispered something amongst themselves. Their panic was clear on their faces, and we could see that through the cameras. In the end, they said, "Don't threaten us, woman. This is not your house. This is my son's house. Only he gets to make those decisions. This house belongs to both Yasmin and me, and we both want you to get out before I'm forced to call the cops." "Trust me, Mom, that will be ugly." "What an ungrateful brat you are, Keith. How can you threaten to kick out your mom?" "She was given a warning and didn't listen. Now both of you will be facing consequences. You have exactly 1 hour to vacate my house before I call the cops. Remember that I have you on surveillance and I will know what you are doing." Frank and Jessica started to yell at us when we hung up. We didn't want to go into an argument with them anymore. Their entitled brains were not meant to participate in conversations or healthy discussions. They didn't care about anything but themselves. We gave them 1 hour while we put all the proof into a folder. Through the cameras, we could see that they were having a discussion but didn't budge. Instead, Jessica started to unpack her bags. That made us both angry as hell. As the hour passed, we called the police with all the evidence we had. Thankfully, they took us seriously and went to our house. We saw the whole fiasco unfold in front of our house. The cops went there and knocked at the door. Jessica and Frank opened the door and immediately faked being confused. After the officers told them everything, they called us and sang a different tune. They said, "Kay, why was there a need to call the cops? We just want to live with our son. Why are you making things so difficult? Tell the cops that this was all a misunderstanding." "I don't want you living with me, Mom. I said that 100 times now. Stop being so freaking entitled. Leave before the cops arrest you and we are forced to press charges." "Kay, don't do this. Please look, we have nowhere to go. You need to let us stay here. Just tell the cops to leave. We will have a calm discussion about this once you come back." "Absolutely not, Mom. You need to back up and go to your apartment. I want my house empty today and right now, Keith. Actually, we can't go back to the apartment. I canceled the lease and sold my furniture. We really have nowhere to go. I thought that she wouldn't mind living with us, so I canceled the lease myself." The audacity of this woman shocked me to the core. She canceled her lease because she thought she could force us to house her. She was freaking insane. Keith was boiling with rage and ready to scream at her sorry ass. He said, "You went behind my back and canceled your lease? What the freaking hell, Mom? You know what? That's not my problem. I don't care where you go. You need to vacate my house." No, Keith. Please listen to me. I've nowhere to go. Don't kick us out. I'm your mother. Do you want your mother to be homeless? You made yourself homeless, Mom, since you don't want to stay in a rented apartment anymore. I won't give you rent money anymore. I'm freaking done. You can take your new man and figure out something for yourself. Get out of my house and don't try to contact me again." At this point, Jessica was literally crying and begging to make us hear her out. She even cried to me and brought up my dead mother to guilt me. They had the very opposite reaction than what she expected. Me and Key got so mad that we shouted at them and hung up. We immediately blocked the numbers because they crossed all our boundaries in one day and somehow made things worse than ever. The cops stayed back at the house and made sure that Jessica and Frank left. I called a mutual friend to help house it until we came back. She also assured me that she would call a locksmith to change our door lock the next day. She's a friend from college, and we trust her a lot. We knew that she would make sure our house was safe. She lived in an apartment, so it was easy for her to come to the house. Frank and Jessica left and went to God knows where. My guess is they spent the night at the hotel and bought new phone numbers to harass us. It didn't work. No relative took their side either because they knew Jessica well enough and they didn't want to be in her drama. Also, they told her in no uncertain terms that they wouldn't house or help her out in any way. That made Jessica focus her attention back on us. For the rest of our vacation, we kept our phones switched off. We opened our phones once daily to check for emergencies, and that's it. We also only called our friend to make sure everything was all right. Yes, Jessica and Frank did show up again and tried to get in. They left after the friend threatened to call the cops again. We're thinking of sending a cease and desist letter before they escalate their behavior. Thankfully, they didn't want to know why. When we got back from vacation, we found out that Frank had decided to leave Jessica. Why, you may ask? Because she couldn't house and feed him for free anymore. Jessica was devastated and begged her son to talk to her. She finally realized that she needed her son for money. He didn't soften at all. He stuck to the no-contact decision that is still in place today. The last we know from family is that Jessica rented a trailer and still works at the retail store with no hope of retirement in sight.